Okay, not to get off topic of what I usually do, discuss the laws of the United States, specifically the constitutional laws, the laws of the land. No law repugnant to the United States Constitution is valid, carries no weight, is void. Okay, so that's what I basically do, is talk to you about getting constitutionally correct. Okay, so this is off topic, but still on topic of what we're going through here in the United States of America, living under the color of law, with our public servants operating under the color of law, which is true in most countries. It says, I looked on the internet to see if Albania was a democracy. Okay, so it tells me so much, but this is the part I wanted to get to. Around 200 demonstrators marched to the protected beach and physically tore down the metal and razor wire security fences enclosing the site. Protester Ian Hosha told reporters that citizens are tired of officials selling off public resources. Okay, so the internet tells me Albania is a parliamentary democracy governed by constitutional framework that separates powers amongst executive, legislative, and judicial branches. While it is recognized multi-party democracy, major international organizations classify it as a flawed democracy or a transitional hybrid regime due to the issues with corruption, clientism, and polarized politics, which doesn't sound too far from where we're at. Okay, so if it is a democracy, okay, I mentioned this many times before, the public trust doctrine. Public trust doctrine is the fundamental legal principle establishing that certain natural and cultural resources, such as navigable waterways, shorelines, wildlife, and preserves for public use. Under this law concept, the government acts as a trustee. So this is from the public. So this is the public trust fund. This happens in every democracy, you know. If you're a constitutional republic, a nation of laws, the public trust doctrine is law. So they're doing over there what they did here. They think it's okay that they're doing it here, and why you're letting them get away with it, because they're breaking the law. But anyways, the public trust doctrine is a fundamental legal principle establishing that certain natural and cultural resources, such as navigable waterways, shorelines, and wildlife, are preserved for public use. Under this common law concept, the government acts as a trustee, protecting these shared assets for the benefit and employment of the general public. Core principles: state ownership, sovereign lands, e.g., tidal and submerged lands beneath navigable waters, belong to the public and cannot be privately owned in a way that obstructs public rights. Evolving protections. While historically limited to traditional commerce, navigation, and fishing, courts have continued to expand the doctrine to include modern recreational uses like swimming, boating, and ecological preservation. Fiduciary duties. States have an ongoing affirmative duty to manage these resources responsibly and prevent significant harm to the public's rights. Common applications: water access and use. The doctrine secures public access along shorelines, typically up to the high water mark, and protects the public's right to navigable and fish in streams, lakes, and oceans. Wildlife management. Wildlife is often treated as a public trust asset that states are obligated to conserve for the benefit of all citizens. Environmental and climate law advocates. Environmental groups have increasingly invoked the public trust doctrine in modern lawsuits, attempting to compel governments to protect broader natural resources such as atmosphere and groundwater from climate change impacts. Jurisdictions and variations because the doctrine is grounded primarily in state common law rather than federal statute. The exact application scopes and enforcements can vary significantly depending on the jurisdiction. For instance, states like California and Washington have robust, judicially expanded interpretations of the doctrine, while others rely on stricter legislative definition. To explore how these principles are applied in your area, you can review guidelines from natural resources. Okay, so there's a lot to be said about the public trust doctrine and protecting, your public trust fund, which is basically what the Albanians are doing right now. But if they are actually a democracy, the public trust doctrine would mean something, and there wouldn't be so much polluting or selling off of private or public lands. That's illegal. What is it? Common law public trust doctrine protects sovereign lands such as tidal, submerged lands, and beds of navigable waters for the benefit, use, employment of the public. These lands are held in trust by the state of California or statewide public and for uses that further the purpose of the trust. When was the public trust doctrine? The first Supreme Court to address the PDD Martin affirmed the doctrine and held that the public maintain a common right to fish in navigable tidal waters. Okay, so you're going to want to get into the overview of the public trust doctrine, and it tells you everything that's contained in the public trust doctrine. Judiciary, public servants, the court system is part of the public trust. And you can research, and you'll find it here in the public trust doctrine. And anybody and everybody that works in the courts take the oath to the Constitution. Loyalty to the Constitution comes first, and that Constitution was written and dedicated to serve and protect we the people. Okay, so you always come first. And if you look up, let's go there. The United States, the oath of public service, officially known as the oath of office, is a formal constitutional commitment required for all federal, state, and local officials, civil servants, and military personnel. It is a legal binding promise to support and defend the Constitution rather than swearing allegiance to any specific individual or political agency. The standard federal oath employees officials specific wording is outlined in U.S. Code 3331. The text of the oath, which involves swearing, support, defend the Constitution, bearing true faith and allegiance to it, and promise to faithfully discharge the duties of office without mental reservation, can be found. Okay, so you can't take the oath to get into office and then just, shit on it. You can't kick the oath no, you took the oath to serve and protect the Constitution, and the Constitution was written to serve and protect we, the people. You're public servants, or they're public servants, people, so, you got to get used to this stuff, okay? And the oath of office trickles down to everybody that works within that office. Okay, and remember the oath, the loyalty to the Constitution always comes first. Violating the oath or giving orders, unlawful orders, An unlawful order is a directive issued by a person or authority that violates the U.S. Constitution, federal statutes, international human rights standards, or military regulations under the USMJ law and U.S. Marshal Court Martial. Service members are required to obey lawful orders, but are actually have a legal duty to disobey manifestly illegal orders. An order is considered unlawful and can be legally refused if it meets any of the following criteria. It requires illegal acts, orders that mandate committing crimes such as intentionally targeting civilians, torturing detainees, or theft, violates fundamental rights, directives that clearly infringe upon U.S. Constitution or federal law, exceeds authority, commands that have no legitimate official, military, or agency nexus, such as being ordered to perform personal errands for a superior. Defense of following orders. The argument, I was just following orders, is not a valid defense for committing war crimes or blatant constitutional violations. Remember, taking those orders, illegal orders, unlawful orders, I was just following orders, is not a valid defense. Service members, government officials who follow unlawful orders can be held personally liable and face prosecution in military or international tribunals. Presumption of legality. In most circumstances, order is presumed to be lawful. Disobeying an order that is merely questionable, unpopular, or based on a policy disagreement rather than a clear illegitimacy can lead to severe penalties, including court-martial under Article 92 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Because of severe consequences of being wrong, service members are often advised to seek immediate counsel from military defense attorneys or judge advocate general when faced with a military or legal ambiguous command. But basically, so unlawful orders. Okay, so saying you didn't know, ignorance of the law is no excuse. It's a fundamental legal principle establishing that a person cannot escape criminal or civil liability for violating law simply by claiming they were unaware of its existence or content. Okay, so it's I mean, seriously, who lives up to the oath? You know, violating the oath and all this stuff I talked about are requirements of the oath of public trust doctrine, loyalty to the Constitution. You know, it happens everywhere. But see, everybody takes advantage in these positions because of your ignorance of the law. And it says that, you know, the deterrence and enforcement, if I didn't know it was illegal, was a valid offense, it would incentivize willful ignorance and make laws unenforceable. Presumption of knowledge. The state presumes that citizens are responsible for familiarizing themselves with the legal statutes in their jurisdiction. Judicial efficiencies. Courts would be overwhelmed if prosecutors had to prove that every defendant specifically knew that the target law inside and out. Are there exceptions? There are very specific and narrow exceptions where a lack of knowledge can from a valid offense. Lack of fair notice. If a law is so obscure or newly created it has not been adequately published or made available to the public, defendant might argue they had no reasonable opportunity to know it existed. Like almost everything I talk about in my videos. Specific, willful intent. Some highly complex regulatory crimes require the prosecution prove the defendant acted willfully, meaning the intentional violation of known legal duty. Mistake of fact versus mistake of law. Practical implications in everyday legal matters, judges and law enforcement that do not accept "I wasn't aware of the law" as to get out of jail free card, even if the law is highly complex. Citizens are bound by it. To learn more about how the doctrine is applied in specific scenarios, explore the legal definition of ignorance of the law, overview, or consult with a qualified attorney. So that's kind of crazy, though, right? You know, you don't know the laws. Nobody's telling you about it. You never heard about it, but you can get arrested for it. And, you know, ignorance of the law is no excuse, folks. When I found that, I forgot when, a long time ago. That's what made me push harder and want to learn more about the law. All these laws I talk to in my videos. Okay, so remember, violating the oath is deprivation of rights. All those videos are giving you the obligations of the oath, you know, from every office that I talk about, you know. And now that everything's on the internet, it's easy for me to prove to you, and I actually read it off the internet. Years ago, people didn't believe me, but that was before the internet. And I just made copies from books and such. And but for the most part, I'm just an avid reader. Some people ask me if I was a lawyer, if I went to law school. No, but apparently I seem to have read more books than they have, you know, when it comes to the law. You know, several times proponents of the law, you know, tried to use their misconception, you know, of my ignorance of the law, and they try. It happens all the time, and they will use their misconceived preconceptions of my ignorance of the law, and make up things. Or if I question them about a law, they'll tell me, "That doesn't mean what you think it means," and I said, "Well, any interpretation devoid the letter of the law is disinformation, and there's penalties for disinformation as well as penalties for violating the letter of the law. So if your decimation is a desecration of the United States Constitution, and you know any law repugnant to the United States Constitution is void." So I might suggest you apply the Fifth Amendment at this point, because any interpretation is a decimation, a desecration, and a defecation on the oath you took to the United States Constitution. So let's stick to the letter of the law. I usually cite the letter of the law so that in the spirit of the law, we all see, say, and hear the same thing. This is Pops from Legal Reform signing out, unaccompanied adult on other websites. Mario Wan 619 on YouTube. My channel is known as The Vent. Okay, I hope I can get your support just by you people sharing my videos wherever you can. I've been trying. I'm an old guy. I don't know all these social media sites. I'm putting what I can, where I can, wherever I can, because I took the Pledge of Allegiance quite seriously from the point of reading the Declaration of Independence. And I still do to this day now. From 1971 till now, I've been doing my best to hold all our public servants, you know, to the oath they took, and reminding them violating the oath is a federal crime known as deprivation of rights. Penalties include fines, removal from public service, and incarceration. Need I remind you again, public servant, whether it be somebody behind the badge, somebody in the court, you know, a politician, The oath requires your loyalty to the Constitution. That's a legal binding contract. And that doesn't end when you leave public service. You know the law, and so do I. Let's start living up to the oath. No more deprivation of rights, no more operating under the color of law. So my people, your people, our people, the people I took a pledge of allegiance to, the people you took the oath to serve and protect. But violating that oath is a federal crime known as deprivation of rights. Thank you for listening. May your Creator always be with you and rain many blessings. I wish you a long life and good health. I wish you nothing but peace and love. Love and happiness, y'all. I wish you nothing but love and happiness. Good night.